The moment I saw it, that text, my world turned upside down. I had no idea it would be the thing that shatters everything. It was a typical evening. The party was buzzing, music in the background, laughter filling the air. My wife, Emily, was acting strange, but I didn't think much of it. After all, she's my wife. Trusting her was the easiest thing in the world. Or at least, it used to be. But there I was, talking to some old friends when I saw them. Emily laughing way too hard at something Mark said. He was leaning in closer than anyone should, too close. I didn't even need to be told. I knew. My stomach dropped. The room spun. I could see it in her eyes, her body language. It wasn't just a friendly conversation. Something was going on. Something she had kept from me for who knows how long. I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself from the conversation and walked straight toward Emily. But before I could reach her, she was gone, slipping away through the crowd like she didn't even notice me. Something snapped inside of me. I needed answers. Where did she go? I asked her friend, Julia, who was standing nearby. I thought she'd tell me Emily was just taking a quick break. But the look on Julia's face said everything I needed to know. She went with Mark, Julia said casually, like it was no big deal. They've been talking all night. Why? What's wrong? That's when everything hit me. Mark? That guy? The one who was always just a friend? I felt a rush of anger surge through me, and before I could even process it, I was walking straight out the door. I wasn't about to sit there wondering anymore. I needed to find out what was really going on, even if it meant facing the worst. I found them in the parking lot, standing next to his car. Emily's back was turned to me, her body pressed so close to Mark that it was impossible to ignore. I couldn't believe it. I had never felt more betrayed in my life. Emily, I shouted, my voice sharp, cutting through the air. She jumped, but not as if she was surprised. No, it was more like she had been expecting this moment. She turned slowly, a smirk on her face that I couldn't quite place. She didn't even look guilty. Instead, her eyes had this strange, almost detached look, as if she was daring me to do something. And I knew right then that the woman I thought I knew was gone. Tom, what are you doing here? She asked, her tone almost bored, as if I wasn't catching her in the act of destroying everything we built. I should be asking you that, I said, the anger in my voice barely contained. What the hell is going on, Emily? She didn't flinch. She didn't look ashamed. In fact, she laughed. What, Tom? You think I'm some kind of angel? You've been so boring lately. Mark makes me feel alive. Isn't that what's important? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Boring? Is that what she really thought of me? I had given her everything, my trust, my time, my love. And this is how she repaid me? By cheating with the one person I thought was a friend? I felt a burning rage in my chest, but I also felt something else, something more powerful than the anger. Hurt. It was the kind of hurt that made me question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and trust. Do you think this makes you happy? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Do you think Mark's going to be there when it all falls apart? Because it will. It always does. Emily didn't say anything for a moment. She just looked at me like I was nothing, as if she had already moved on. And maybe she had. You don't get it, do you? She said coldly, her voice almost taunting. I'm done with this. We're done. You're boring, Tom. I need someone who can keep up with me. Her words cut deeper than any action she could have taken. She didn't just betray me physically, she betrayed me emotionally, mentally. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I turned around, walking away without another word, but her laughter followed me like a shadow. She thought she won. She thought I'd just walk away and let her have it all. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. That night, I wasn't just going to let her walk away. I was going to show her what happens when you mess with the wrong person. The night wasn't over, not by a long shot. The moment I stepped into the quiet, dimly lit room, my mind was racing. I couldn't let the shock consume me, not yet. The betrayal was raw, but there was something else bubbling inside me now. It was more than anger, it was a cold determination. I had been played for a fool for too long, and now it was time to take control of this twisted situation. I didn't go straight home. I couldn't. I needed a moment to breathe, to process. The car felt like a cage, my fist clenched against the steering wheel. What was I even supposed to say? What was there to say? Emily had made it clear she was done with me, with us. And Mark? He had no right to be in my life, in my marriage. They were both dead to me, but I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just leave it like that. I drove aimlessly for a while, my mind still on that moment outside the parking lot, seeing them together, so comfortable with each other. The betrayal stung even more now that I was alone with my thoughts. How long had it been going on? How long had she been lying to me, stringing me along while she made a fool out of me? Finally, after what felt like hours, I ended up at home. The house felt empty, cold, like a shell of what it used to be. Emily's things were scattered around, little reminders of a life that no longer existed. I walked through the front door, my breath catching when I saw the jacket she'd left on the couch. It was hers, the one I had bought her last Christmas. It should have meant something, but now it was just another symbol of the lies. I sat down at the kitchen table, waiting. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I knew I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had to face what she had done. She had to feel the consequences, just like I had to. Then the door opened. It wasn't a dramatic entrance, no sudden rush or confrontation. Emily walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She didn't even look surprised to see me sitting there, waiting. "Tom, what are you doing here?" she asked, the same detached, almost mocking tone she had used earlier. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look anything like the woman I had married. She looked like a stranger. I stood up slowly, keeping my eyes locked on her. "I think we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the fury boiling inside me. "About what happened tonight. About Mark." She rolled her eyes, a sigh escaping her lips. "Oh, this again? You're acting like I've done something so awful. Mark and I were just having fun. I needed to feel alive, Tom. You're too boring." Boring. Those words. The ones she used to justify everything. I couldn't believe how easily she dismissed it all, like it didn't even matter. "So this is what it comes down to? You didn't think I'd notice? You didn't think I'd find out?" I asked, trying to control my voice, trying not to let my rage spill over. She shrugged, as if the entire affair was just something trivial, a mistake in her eyes. "I told you before, Tom. We weren't working. And you? You've become so predictable. So boring. Mark is different. He makes me feel wanted." The words stung more than I could have ever imagined. Not just the fact that she cheated, but the complete lack of remorse. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't begging me to understand. She wasn't even acting like she cared. She just didn't care. "You think that's going to make it better?" I shot back, my voice rising now. "You think he is going to make you happy? Because I promise you, Emily, it's going to blow up in your face. It always does. Always." She stepped closer to me, the smugness never leaving her face. "You really think I care about your opinion anymore?" She spat, her tone cold, cruel. "I don't need you, Tom. I never needed you. This was just an inconvenience." Her words cut deeper than any slap could. It wasn't the affair that hurt the most. It was how easily she dismissed everything we had built together. All the years, the memories, the promises we made, just gone. I took a deep breath, trying to control the storm inside me. I had a choice. I could let this continue, keep fighting for a marriage that she had already destroyed. Or I could walk away, leave her to face the consequences of her actions. The decision was clear. "You think this is over, don't you?" I said, my voice calmer now. "But it's not. You're going to regret this. I'll make sure of it." She looked at me, not with fear or regret, but with defiance. "You're not going to do anything, Tom. You never do." With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. There was no turning back now. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't escape the images in my head of her, of them, together, laughing, while I was left in the dark. The anger that had once consumed me began to fade, replaced by something worse, emptiness. It was like I had been living in a lie, in a version of my life that didn't exist anymore. And now, everything had come crashing down. I spent the first few nights in the guest room, not sure what to do. Emily didn't seem to care. She went on with her life as if nothing had happened, while I was falling apart, piece by piece. Every time I saw her, the hurt was there simmering beneath the surface. But she acted like nothing was wrong. She would walk through the house, her phone glued to her hand, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, pretending like I wasn't even there. She had completely shut me out, as if I had been nothing but a fleeting moment in her life. But I wasn't going to let it go. Not after everything. Not after she had looked me in the eye and lied, told me I was boring, like I was the one who had ruined everything. I knew I needed to confront her again, but this time, it wasn't just about the affair, it was about taking back control. I wasn't going to let her dictate the terms of this. I wasn't going to be the one sitting in the background, crying over someone who didn't give a damn about me. The following weekend, I saw it. A text message, one that would change everything. Emily had left her phone on the counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but I needed answers, and she had made it clear she wasn't going to give them to me willingly. The message was from Mark. I didn't even have to read the entire conversation to know what was happening. The words jumped off the screen. We can't keep doing this. What if Tom finds out? I felt a cold chill run through me. It wasn't just the fact that she was still talking to him. It was the fact that she was planning her next move. She was already thinking about how to keep me in the dark, how to keep lying to me, how to continue this charade. And what's worse, she didn't care. She didn't care about me, about our life, about any of it. All she cared about was herself and what she could get out of this. That's when I knew. I wasn't just dealing with a woman who made a mistake. I was dealing with someone who had no respect for me, for what we had built. Emily was toxic. She wasn't the woman I had married. She was a stranger, someone I didn't even recognize anymore. I didn't know how much longer I could take it. I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to sit there and beg for her to come back, to apologize. I wasn't that person anymore. I was done with all the lies. And I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, not anymore. It was time for action. I couldn't let her get away with this. If she thought she could just waltz in and out of my life without consequences, she was wrong. I was going to make her face the truth. She was going to see just how deep she had cut me, how much damage she had done. That night, when she came home, I was ready. I wasn't going to play her game anymore. I wasn't going to stand there, listening to her excuses, pretending like everything could go back to normal. I had already made up my mind. When she walked in, I didn't greet her. I didn't say a word. I simply handed her the phone. Her face immediately drained of color when she saw the text messages. The smirk on her face, the one that had been there the night she confronted me, was gone. For the first time in days, I saw something resembling fear in her eyes. She tried to say something, tried to come up with an explanation, but I wasn't listening. I had heard enough. I had been a fool long enough. Don't even try to lie to me, I said, my voice low, calm. I'm done with the lies, Emily. You've made your choice. Now, so have I. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, she didn't have an answer. She was just standing there, looking at me, realizing that everything she had built, every lie she had told, had finally caught up with her. I wasn't going to fight for her anymore. I wasn't going to beg her to stay. The woman I had once loved was gone, and in her place was someone I didn't even recognize. I'm leaving, I said, the words cutting through the silence. I'm done. I won't be part of this toxic mess anymore. I don't need to fight for your love. I'm done fighting for a relationship that's already dead. I didn't wait for her to respond. I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, probably wondering what the hell just happened. I wasn't her punching bag anymore. I wasn't going to be the one left in the dark, waiting for her to decide when and if she would show up. This was it. No more lies. No more games. I was done. I don't know what I expected when I walked out that door, but I didn't expect to feel this empty. I thought that finally standing up for myself would make everything feel better, but instead, it felt like a huge weight had just landed on me, and I didn't know how to carry it. Emily didn't even try to stop me. She didn't beg or cry, didn't do anything that might have shown she still cared. That should have told me everything I needed to know. The days after I left were a whirlwind of emotions. There was anger, of course, so much anger. But there was also something else, something that hit me harder. It was that sense of loss. Losing someone you thought you could trust, someone you build a life with, it changes you. It makes you question everything you believed in. I felt like I didn't even know who I was anymore. What did I want? What was I supposed to do now? I couldn't just keep running from the truth, though. I had to face it head on. And the truth was, I had been letting Emily walk all over me for far too long. She had made me believe I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't exciting enough for her. She had made me feel like I was the problem when all along, it was her. She had destroyed everything. For the first time in years, I took a hard look at myself. I wasn't perfect, but I was trying. I had given her my all, and she had taken it all for granted. But I wasn't going to let her tear me down anymore. I wasn't going to let her define who I was. It was time to move on. I had to rebuild my life from the ground up, and it started now. I rented an apartment a few days later. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It felt like the first real step toward freedom. I unpacked my things, tried to make it feel like home, but it was hard. The emptiness of the space mirrored the emptiness I felt inside. I didn't have any answers to the questions in my mind. How could I just walk away from everything? How could I walk away from her? But deep down, I knew I had no choice. Emily had taken everything I had given her and thrown it away. And I wasn't going to keep holding on to something that wasn't worth saving. The next few weeks were filled with long nights and endless reflection. I thought about everything, about what went wrong, about the things I could have done differently. But in the end, it didn't matter. What mattered now was what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let this betrayal be the story of my life. Emily tried to contact me several times. She left messages, sent texts, and even showed up at my apartment unannounced. But I ignored it all. Every time I saw her name on my phone, I just deleted it. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses, her apologies. I didn't care about her version of the story anymore. I didn't need her to explain why she cheated. I had seen everything I needed to see. Her actions spoke louder than any words could. One afternoon, she showed up at my door. She looked different, like she had been crying. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered everything. I remembered the way she had disrespected me, the way she had made me feel like I wasn't enough. "Tom, please," she said, her voice shaky. "I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. We can start over." I looked at her, at the woman who had once been my whole world, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. But not because I wanted to fix things, not because I wanted to go back to what we had. No, I felt sorry for her because she still didn't understand. She didn't understand that she had already made her choice. And now, I was making mine. "I'm not the person you think I am," I said quietly, but with conviction. "You don't get to just walk back into my life because you made a mistake. You don't get to destroy everything and then expect me to just take you back. It doesn't work like that." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. "I've already moved on, Emily. You should too. There's nothing left for us here." She stood there for a moment, her face a mix of shock and disbelief. And then, she turned and left without another word. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, staring at the door, but when I finally closed it, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't the peace I had expected when I made the decision to leave. It was more like a quiet resolve. I had done what I needed to do. I had taken control of my life again. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe. I was free. Free from the lies, free from the betrayal, free from the woman who had never truly respected me. It was over. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what came next, I would be okay. The days following my decision to leave were like a strange kind of limbo. It was hard to find stability when everything in your life had just been upended. I had always thought I was strong enough to deal with whatever life threw my way. But now, with everything that had happened, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust myself again, let alone anyone else. I found myself drowning in my own thoughts. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., the silence of the apartment suffocating me. My mind would race through the memories of the last few years. How did it all go wrong? How had I been so blind? She wasn't the woman I had fallen in love with, and yet I had kept holding on to her like a fool, convinced that I could fix things. I hadn't seen Emily for a few weeks. I hadn't heard from her either, which was strange. Part of me expected her to come crawling back, trying to make amends, but that didn't happen. And I was starting to wonder if it was because she had already found someone else, or maybe because she truly didn't care about me at all. It didn't matter either way. It wasn't my problem anymore. Despite the resolve I had shown when I walked out, the pain lingered. There were moments when I would drive past places we used to go to, and it would hit me like a ton of bricks. All those memories, all that history between us, it felt like it was vanishing, slipping through my fingers like sand. How could everything we had built just disappear in an instant? I spent most of my time at work, burying myself in my responsibilities, trying to keep my mind occupied. But even that felt empty. It wasn't that I didn't have a passion for my job. It was just that, without Emily by my side, nothing felt the same. I found myself distracted at meetings, making careless mistakes, and not caring about the consequences. Then, one evening, I decided to go out. I hadn't seen friends in weeks. I hadn't spoken to anyone outside of work. The isolation was starting to weigh on me, and I needed to remind myself that I still had a life beyond the wreckage of my marriage. I called up Mike, someone I used to hang out with before all the chaos. It was time to face the world again, to stop letting Emily's betrayal define me. I met Mike at a local bar, a quiet little place I had visited countless times before. It was strange to sit there alone, without Emily, without the woman who had been my world for so long. But as the night wore on, I started to loosen up. Mike made jokes, and I laughed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a flicker of something close to happiness. It wasn't much, but it was something. We talked about everything and nothing: sports, work, old memories, and I even caught myself talking about the relationship, though not in the way I had before. I didn't get into the details of the betrayal, but Mike could tell something was off. He was a good friend, always had been. He asked me how I was really doing. Honestly, man, I said, setting my drink down, I'm not sure. Some days it feels like everything's just crashing down. Other days, it's like I'm just numb to it all. It's weird. I thought I would feel better by now, but I don't. I just feel lost. Mike looked at me, his expression serious. It's normal to feel like that. You've been through a lot. Just don't do what a lot of guys do, man. Don't bottle it up. You've got to work through it. You can't just ignore it. I nodded, appreciating his words. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was the truth. I couldn't keep running from it. I had to face the fact that the marriage I had fought so hard to preserve was over. I had to accept that the woman I had loved had chosen someone else. I couldn't change it. I couldn't go back in time and undo it. But what I could do was move forward. I could rebuild. I could take the shattered pieces of my life and start putting them back together. I wasn't sure where to begin, but I knew I couldn't stay in the past. I had to let go of Emily, of the pain, and of the person I used to be. That night, as I left the bar, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was hope. Maybe not for a future with Emily, but for a future of my own. I didn't know what that future looked like yet, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. As I drove back to my apartment, the weight of the last few months seemed a little lighter. I wasn't out of the woods yet, but I could see a path forward. I was learning to let go of the past, to stop allowing it to control me. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And for the first time since Emily walked out on me, I believed that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The weeks dragged on, and while I had made progress, there was still something lingering. The weight of my past with Emily, the memories of our marriage, those things hadn't completely faded. I'd moved into a new routine, new habits, trying to redefine myself, but there were days when I'd wake up and feel the emptiness all over again. It wasn't just about missing her, it was about missing who I thought I was with her. I had spent so much of my identity wrapped up in our relationship, and now that it was gone, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. It was late one night when I had another revelation, one that shifted everything. I had been scrolling through old photos on my phone, looking back at pictures of the two of us on vacations, at birthdays, at family gatherings. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the crushing pain. Instead, I felt nothing. The faces that once meant everything to me, her face, the face I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, had started to fade into the background. It was an odd sensation, like a wave of clarity had washed over me. All those emotions, all that heartbreak, were finally starting to make sense. I had spent so much of my time grieving the person I thought she was, not the woman she had actually become. I had romanticized the memories, as if they held all the answers to the pain I was going through. But they didn't. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't just grieving the loss of her, I was grieving the loss of the man I had been. I had let my identity become too tied to her, to the relationship, and now that it was gone, I was left with a shell of who I once was. But I wasn't that man anymore. The man I was becoming was stronger, more resilient. The man I was becoming wasn't going to be defined by someone else's choices or their actions. I had the power to choose who I wanted to be. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the victim. I was a person, and I had a life to rebuild. I put my phone down, standing up from the couch and walking over to the window. It was raining outside, but there was something peaceful about the sound of the rain hitting the glass. I stood there for a while, letting the moment sink in. I had been so caught up in trying to fix everything that I had forgotten to look at the bigger picture. I wasn't broken. I was just learning to be myself again. I took a deep breath, a smile tugging at the corner of my lips. The truth was, I was never going to get over everything with Emily overnight. But I was starting to see that I didn't need to. I didn't need her to validate me. I didn't need her to tell me I was worthy of love. I was worthy of it all on my own. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, lighter, like a burden had been lifted off my shoulders. I had spent so much time replaying everything, trying to fix something that had already been broken beyond repair. Now, I was ready to move on, truly move on, and embrace whatever the future had in store for me. I started making changes. I signed up for a gym. I started getting back into things I loved, things I had put off for too long. I began spending more time with my friends, with people who cared about me, not the people who had taken advantage of me. For the first time in a long time, I was putting myself first. I wasn't chasing anyone's approval anymore. I was doing things because I wanted to. A few weeks later, I met someone. Her name was Sophie. We hit it off instantly. She wasn't anything like Emily. She wasn't trying to fix me or heal my wounds. She was just herself, and that was enough. I didn't feel the need to rush into anything with her. It was different this time. I wasn't looking for someone to fill the hole in my heart. I was learning how to fill it myself. Sophie and I started spending more time together, but it wasn't out of desperation or loneliness. It was because I actually enjoyed her company. It was because I could finally see the possibility of a future with someone who didn't define me by my past. But even with Sophie, I had learned something important. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I didn't need a woman to make me feel whole. What I needed was to love myself, to rediscover who I was outside of the confines of a relationship. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was progress. And that was all I needed to know. It's funny how life works. One moment, you're down in the depths, drowning in self-doubt and heartbreak. The next, you're standing tall, staring at a future you never thought possible. It wasn't an overnight transformation, though. It was a slow, painful crawl back to life, one step at a time. And as I stood there, looking at the man I was becoming, I realized just how much I had grown. Sophie had been a reminder of what it felt like to be seen, to be valued for who I was, not for who I had been in the shadow of Emily's betrayal. She wasn't trying to fix me or make me forget my past. She simply accepted me, flaws, scars, and all. And for the first time since my marriage crumbled, I felt like I wasn't constantly running from something, but walking towards something better. But even as I started to feel myself heal, there were moments that caught me off guard. Moments when Emily would pop up in my life again. A text, a phone call, or even just a random encounter at the grocery store. Every time it happened, I found myself frozen in place, unsure of how to react. It was like a reflex, a knee-jerk reaction to the past that I had worked so hard to leave behind. It wasn't that I still loved her. No, that ship had sailed. It was more the fact that the scars she left were still there. The anger, the betrayal, they were all still simmering beneath the surface. But now, instead of feeling like a victim, I felt something else. Something stronger. I felt like I had control. One afternoon, while I was out with Sophie, I saw Emily at a cafe. She was sitting at a table by the window, talking to someone, laughing in that way I remembered so well. The way she laughed when everything was right in the world, when I was the one sitting across from her, thinking that nothing could ever tear us apart. But now, everything had changed. And as I looked at her, I realized how far I had come. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't consumed by thoughts of revenge or bitterness. I didn't need to confront her, to tell her everything I had been holding in. I had already let go. Sophie noticed me looking and followed my gaze. "You okay?" she asked softly, her hand gently resting on mine. I looked at Sophie, the woman who had become my safe space, the one who hadn't tried to fix me, but instead allowed me to heal on my own terms. "Yeah, I'm good," I replied, smiling at her. "Just thinking about the past. I used to be stuck there, but I'm not anymore." Sophie squeezed my hand, her smile genuine and kind. "I'm proud of you." I turned back to Emily, watching her for a moment longer. She hadn't seen me. She was too busy in her world. And for once, I was okay with that. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was free. And that was enough. As Sophie and I walked away from the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was like a final chapter had been closed. Emily no longer had a hold on me. The woman I had once loved, the woman who had betrayed me, was now just a memory. And I had learned everything I needed to learn from that chapter. I wasn't going to let it define me. The future was ahead of me now. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to face it. Time passed, and each day felt a little lighter. I had finally come to a place where the past no longer had the power to control me. I could look back at the relationship I had with Emily without feeling the crushing weight of betrayal. It wasn't that I had forgotten what she did. It wasn't about forgiving and forgetting. It was about accepting that it was over and that it no longer had a place in my life. The man I was becoming wasn't defined by her or the mess she had left behind. I was my own person now, and I could finally see that. Sophie had become a significant part of my life, but not in the way I had expected. At first, I was wary. I wasn't looking for a rebound, wasn't looking for someone to replace what I had lost. But Sophie wasn't trying to be that person. She was simply Sophie, and that was enough. She understood that I had baggage, that I wasn't the same person I had been before, but she accepted me for who I was in the present, not the person I had been when I was with Emily. We started spending more time together, And I found myself enjoying life again, something I hadn't thought was possible after everything with Emily. Sophie didn't need to fill a void in my heart. She just made me feel like I was enough. She made me realize that I didn't have to be defined by the hurt I had experienced. I didn't have to carry the weight of my past around with me anymore. And, over time, I realized that I was ready to open up again, ready to trust again. Not in the way I had with Emily, not with the same blind devotion. But I could see the potential for something real, something honest, and something built on respect and understanding. With Sophie, it wasn't about fixing the broken pieces of me. It was about building something new, something whole. As much as I had grown, as much as I had healed, I knew there would always be remnants of the past, reminders that I couldn't erase. But those remnants no longer felt like chains. They were just part of my journey, part of who I had become. I wasn't the man I had been when Emily and I first got together. I wasn't the man who had believed every lie, who had trusted so easily. I had learned from my mistakes. I had learned from the pain. A few months later, Sophie and I went on a weekend trip to the mountains. It was the first real vacation I had taken since everything had fallen apart with Emily. The drive was long, the weather was unpredictable, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that Sophie and I were there together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe. There was no more tension, no more unresolved feelings. Just the sound of the wind against the car, the quiet chatter between us, and the promise of a future. On our second day there, as we hiked up a trail, Sophie stopped and looked at me. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, and said, "You're doing amazing, you know?" I felt a rush of emotion, something deep inside me that I hadn't expected. I didn't say anything at first, just smiled back. She didn't need to say those words. They meant more than she would ever know. She wasn't just speaking about our relationship. She was speaking about everything I had been through, everything I had survived. She saw me for who I was, not for what had happened to me. "Thanks," I said, my voice a little shaky. I didn't think I could ever get to this point. But here I am. Sophie reached for my hand and squeezed it. It was the simplest gesture, but it felt like the world. In that moment, I realized how far I had come. I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. I wasn't letting the pain and the betrayal define me. I was moving forward. I was living for myself, for the person I was becoming. And that was the most freeing feeling of all. As we continued our hike, with the towering trees surrounding us and the world feeling quiet and still, I made a vow to myself. I wasn't going to be afraid of the future anymore. I wasn't going to let my past dictate my happiness. I had faced the darkest moments of my life, and I had survived. I had learned to heal, to grow, to let go, and now I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Emily was a chapter in my story, but she was no longer the story. I was writing my own story now, one that was just beginning. And this time, I was in control.